empty. It's a little Yeti, 10 ouncer. Works perfect for general coffee in the morning. Except for one thing. It holds it hot for a long dang time. Now I know Andy does this on farming fixing, fabricating. I'm just doing it because I like these things. Andy introduced me to them, the Olight, and they're pretty good. One thing I don't believe he introduced me into was the Olight O-Pen. And yes, this is open. That's kind of a bad design if you're out in dirty world, but at the same time, it's a small pen, it's a short pen, and the thing that's nice about it is, oh shoot, I don't have one right here now, which I should, but I know where it is, it's out now. But let's put it this way. If this is your notepad, there's the size. It's just a little bigger than your notepad. No, you can't see what my bank statement is. It's pathetic. I did have some up there, but anyway, that's the same as a notepad size. So it's beautiful in the pocket, doesn't get in the way. The thing's tougher than nails. It unscrews up here at the black. That's one of the things that occasionally is a problem. Why? Because the way they have the lock here pushes in the direction that the thing loosens up. So when you put it in place, you tend to loosen the thing up. Well, not always, but it's happened enough. But the thing writes excellent. The refills are dirt cheap. The pen's not dirt cheap. I think that's $20 or $25. But then again, some of you that are in my age group, what's a Parker or a good old Papermate used to cost? When I was in college, Parker and Papermate were my life. I had about 3 each. One had blue, the other had black. Papermate was a little smoother to write, but it was smaller in diameter. The Parker, with my mechanic hands, even at 19, 20 years old, it made a nice difference. Anyway, that's all. Jamsey Online, Jameson machine, that's rusty, but this is something they did not use when they repaired their Mercury V8, Ford V8 engine with a crack up through the intake port and across underneath the valve seat. This is the Castmaster C3 pin. And what it is the lower part of the thread underneath is 60 degrees. On top, it's 20 degrees. But either way, it's like having a double angle. The tap is the opposite, going in when you tap the thing. So that when it fits, the 20 degree actually holds the cast. It's not something that's going to pull it together. But as you drill the hole and go across it, of course you start it at the end. Ideally, you use their jig on relatively flat surfaces. If it's wavy or something like that, you use their jig, which means you drill the first hole because somebody mentioned it in Jamsey. No, you do the spacing thing. No, you don't. Not in Jamsey's idea either, but when you're using Castmaster pins, you start at the end of the hole and you drill the next one, you intersect it about somewhere around 15 to 25%. You're hoping that you've intersected it through the flat here as well as just tickled into the threads. Why? Because in this case, the next thread's going to grab this one and it'll walk on down the line. So, and that's what the rusty groove is here. That's a breakoff point, torque point. So you bolt it, you screw the thing in, twists off, you're all done. Go to the next one. This one actually gives a little bit of strength back to it. Now, in other cases, some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, you got to use the locks. Well, in certain cases, you use the key locks. You drill your hole pattern, pound the lock in there. Depending on who you talk to, the old system, they filled it full of, they put the locks in first with seal lace on the Seal Lock International deal. They would put the locks in where they want them all the way along, and then they would put the pins in between. Well, if you have to follow how they want you to do the locks. Because in some cases, they want you to put all the pins in and then put the locks in. In other cases, they want you to put the locks in and then pin across the locks. You put the locks into full depth, so as or nearly full depth, like 80%. And then when it's sealed and you pin the things in place, they do their own sealing. And then you put the pins in to also bite into it and go all the way across. And each of them has their own difference, how many they want in there. The Seal Lace, Seal Lock system They're all soft iron tape or soft steel tapered pins. So they put the locks in twice as often, but they're easier to install. So anyway, go to Jamsey online and look at that, what they had done. The cleaning guy, Dad, didn't peen because he said it was too thin, and that's unfortunate. You need to take a ball peen hammer or a blunt, small, light-duty air hammer and pound it in there. The peening, the 2000s interference fit, the tapered hat at the top of the L series pins that they used, and the chemical sealer that they put on there, and then the final peening before everything all sets. The total package is what does the sealing. He was afraid because it was thin, and that's not a bad fear to have, but if it doesn't seal, it ends up, what's the point? If you have a continuous leak in some spots, you follow what both companies said. You drill where the problem is directly so that it opens the hole up. You can put another pin in there and lock everything together. The problem is when you get more than 2 pins across, yeah, it can get ugly, but it works. I've done it in the shop here a few times I was experimenting on an 8N head that had been cracked and jackass welded. That's the only way I can put it, jackass welded. It actually separated from the cast and had like a hat of weld all the way up through, so that there was a gap in there. Well, then it split. When the weld went lengthwise, it split widthwise right across the weld. And that's why I ended up with it. They made a mess of it. Am I against welding the head? No, not at all. In fact, I welded an Allis-Chalmers head around the exhaust ports because they got rusted and worn off by an 1/8 inch or so. I have to keep watch here on my time so I can get back upstairs. Debbie and I have been having some rough times lately health-wise, but I figured I would come on here covering some of the Facebook stuff I do. But at the same time, something that hit me tonight, and I guess it was because, Tom, if you happen to see this. Oh, and before I go there, I have a channel with 58 followers and 141, well, now 142 videos. Isn't that impressive? Shoot, I wish I could do more in the shop, but the thing is, once I get going in the shop, I'm on customer work, and it's difficult to actually. If you watch Jamsey and the others talk to it, they're not making money when they make the videos unless they make money off of Facebook or Instagram. Yeah, YouTube. Now, what I did do tonight, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was this little guy right here. You John Deere guys ought to be very familiar with this one, Tom. I know you definitely are, and Andy, you must be as well. Which would also mean his mechanic's son there. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, buddy, but whatever. We'll continue on. That's a pencil nozzle. The things are, what, 1/2 inch in diameter, maybe? They're usually in the neighborhood of 6 inches long. The biggest problem with these things is they put them in the head. This is the only seal. Up above here, this is just a dust and water seal. That's it. This is the compression seal in there. So if you put them in wrong and cut that puppy, you've got a leak. You destroy your head and your injector. 50-50 shot on the head, but still. The arm here, the connector, that is comes in different configurations depending on your engine. This is the hold down that's pretty consistent. This U-bracket goes over the inlet tube, feed tube, to hold the injector in the position that they want it in. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be close, so that spray pattern, the injector goes in at an angle, but the spray pattern is still parallel to the top of the piston. And you need to get it in that bowl, and it usually just has like a 20-degree down angle. And that little thing keeps it in the position so it stays where it belongs. The other part of it too is up here on top. Well, I'm going to have to put my glasses back on for some of this because it's starting to hurt. Up here on top, you see that little screw there and the little lock nut? Yeah, that's not your pressure adjustment. Your pressure adjustment's actually further down, another nut. You don't see it in the picture here because it's covered up. But there's a nut. Well, what you have to do is loosen the upper nut, turn the screw out, at least half a turn to a full turn. Then you make your pressure adjustment. Then you turn this all the way down, or you gently run the screw down, and that's one of the problems with these things if you're trying to adjust them at home or actually clean the things and service them. And if I remember correctly, you turn it down till you just touch, and then back it off someplace in the neighborhood of half to one turn. I can't remember. It might even be as far as 2 turns, but what it does is controls how far that the pintle comes back so that its reaction is within time period that it needs to be. Because if it comes back too far, it takes too long to close, and now you got another problem. So you'll have too low a pressure in your actual injection line, your residual pressure as the engine's running. So they're trying to avoid that and keep the pressure waves in the line from changing too much. Down at the bottom is still usually 6 holes. That's pretty common. But what's the problem there with these things? Well, the problem is as I said, that pintle in there is 4 inches long. It's not your little short, thick, heavy pintle. It's a smaller, much smaller body, obviously, and it's a very small pintle. They're cheap to produce. I think I've only in the past cleaned maybe a total of half a dozen that I've worked with over the years. But that's back in the day when we used to have things called mutton tallow, which had a specific kind of abrasive in it designed for these things. And they used to have test fluid, but usually we had different diesel fuels back then. I mean, considerably different than today. They were more lubricating value in their own right. They were just plain better fuels. Were they dirtier? Yeah, they were dirtier, but at the same time, the ash and the sulfur, they cleaned up as much as they could, but the two were dispersants for the paraffin. And the paraffin was a lubricant. So while you're saying it was dirtier fuel, yes, it was, but at the same time, that stuff that they're calling dirty now was a huge factor in keeping paraffin, a lot of paraffin in there to lubricate the parts as it went through. And so why would it? I don't know. It's a specific kind of paraffin. If you listen to the old advertisements for Wolf's Head, what's the other stuff there? Quaker State and Pennzoil. They all bragged about being there's 1 or 2 others, but those are the 3 main ones that lived. And they had different, I think they had another one called Penn Grade. That was a semi-local one here. And Pennsylvania grade crude oil that they had here, just below the border, because we're in southern New York here, southern tier, not downstate Clownville, no. But it had a high paraffin content for lubrication. So it was a better oil at the time. Later on, as the engine started putting out more power, the heat caused trouble. Well, similar with the new fuels, the sulfur and the ash that used to have a value to the fuel, now they're running hotter, higher pressures, and no, it does not have value. So with that injector there, they had to go the way of the Goonie Bird. And they were worthless. Go like lemmings right over the edge. What's the major problems with those things for those tractors? Oliver used them, Minneapolis Moline, I think, did. John Deere used billions of them. Caterpillar liked using a pile of them. They were cheap. Throwaway. I mean, yeah, most of the companies had reman programs for them too. But we couldn't touch them in the shop because we weren't fully set up for it, so we took too long. We could pop test them, but if they didn't, they'd over the shoulder. $15. No, you're talking in the 80s, but still, $15. Oh yeah, they got real expensive in the 90s, 25. I mean, at that time, spark plug prices went up to like $3 or $4. And you're like, holy cow, it's like diesel spark plug price compared to anything. Over the shoulder. So, I just want to have a talk on that pencil injector nozzle because some of you out there actually work on this stuff now and then. And the pencil nozzles, you might say, well, maybe I can, maybe you can, maybe you can't. You need mutton tallow. There is some lapping compounds I found on Amazon that I'd be tempted to mix with a non-detergent oil, like an SAE 30 or something, and like 1,000 grit or finer. I've seen some very, very high, 1,000, 1,200, someplace up in there. And something like that, carefully used, but also carefully cleaned out. But what we used to also have that you can't find today very easily is we had, how do you call it? They're little pin vices is what they were. And we were able to put wire in there like 3, 4 thousandths, 5 thousandths to go through the holes and clean them out. And our instructor was giving us a hard time about putting the wire in and breaking it off, which is too easy to do sometimes. They get carboned up in there. But at the same time, what he didn't get across to us is something that's obvious in any shop. But still, bosses that are managers, not mechanics, will scream at you about the same thing. And for you that are on the farm, you're going to feel stupid, like, oh no, I ruined it. Well, guess what? You put the wire in there and you couldn't get the carbon out, you broke the wire off. Oh no, I've ruined it. Well, if you didn't get the carbon out, you didn't ruin it. And in 40 plus years, almost 45 years of working out in the field, actually, if you count my farm time on my uncle's farm and such, and Annie's wheelbarrow down here with San Marcangeli outside of Endicott, I've got well over 45 years of out there working, turning wrenches, repairing, working on farms. So let me say something that they don't like to hear, but it's true as can be. It doesn't matter. You ruined it. No, you didn't. If you couldn't get it through because there was something lodged in there and you broke the wire off, whoop-de-flip-and-do. Throw it out and get another one. I don't mean throw the wire out and get another one. I mean throw the nozzle out and get another one. Your drills that go into pin vise, the smallest I've seen so far is 10 thousandths, 20 thousandths, something like that, and they're special. So what are you going to do? Put that in there and drill the wire out? I don't think so. So I found a bunch of wire that I'm going to try and look into. Why? Well, why not? You know, you got some of this old stuff that a guy like me with lesser shop rate could actually put some time into cleaning things up, putting them back together, and see what they can do. I just did one in a Hat's engine that was a standard full body injector, and I took the tip off. The rest of it, disassembled the thing, lost the shim, adjustment shim for the spring without realizing it. I was very careful taking it out, but somehow it disappeared and hit the floor, and I just all of a sudden caught my eye. I was like, yeah, I knew it went together wrong. It didn't feel right. It didn't pop right. Dog hair, they're still shedding. And put it back together, but just the carburetor cleaner, blowing the thing out, cleaning it out, it ran completely different after that, at least from the description I was given. So I did that in between getting parts for the starter that the kids destroyed because I couldn't figure out how to start the engine. You start the engine on full throttle all the time and then back it off to idle. They were cranking it until they destroyed the starter. Duh. So those are some of the things that I just figured I'd cover that I've run into here recently. So now you've got an idea of what I'm up to half the time. Stuff that I will be up. Oh, that's something I didn't show you either. My last thing before I go. This is my Olight. I forgot what the model they call this thing, but it's a doggone pen light. It takes a couple of AAAs. There it is. I3T. It's a great light. And the thing about these is if you turn it on, there you go, you can get a brighter light. Don't click it, full click it. There's one click. You didn't click it yet. Now you click it and you got a daggum bright light. I rarely ever use it that way. But just something to play around with. This one's similar. I think it has 3 settings. It takes a little fumbling around to get used to it because you only have the one button, but you can do it. The magnet in the back for charging. This one obviously doesn't charge. And the chargers are great. They're little bitty pads. The smaller version I have of this actually comes with a charging box. You can charge the box up and take it with you someplace. Or you can charge the flashlight and the box together and take the two wherever you're going to go, take the light out, then later on when you're done using it, if it's low enough, you can put it in the box and charge it to wherever. I think you get half a dozen charges or something like that out of it. The lights last so long, the box is kind of pointless except for storage. You know, a flashlight like this, even using it daily, it lasts a month. And what do you do when you come in to charge it? You do this. You hear that click? It goes on a little bitty blue charger pad. And then the light changes from green on the pad to red. Now it's charging. And that even has a slight magnetism that'll stay on my little metal table here. They work good. Anyway, it's time for me to get to bed. I'm going to be late for Debbie at this point because I covered 20 minutes. Yeah, I got to go. At night we do our Bible reading, and she would like me to get up there at a reasonable amount of time before she falls asleep, and I wake her back up so we can read. Yeah, we're old. We got our preferences. You don't fight about it. It's one of the reasons we married late, and it's also one of the reasons that we're getting along quite well after 20. It'll be 23 years this coming April. Peace and long life. May the Lord bless his children. And if you're not one of his children, get you some. Don't waste around. If you can't tell by the crap that's going on in the United States now that the end's coming pretty soon. Hey, if you come on here sometime and I'm laughing like mad and then disappear, and you're still watching, trust me, you're screwed. The Lord called. I'm gone. You have a good night.